Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I am Ethan, joined by Pete. Hey, Pete.
How's it going?
Everything is great. I think we've skipped a week, but we are now back to our weekly stream or skip segment.
That's right. Not only did we skip a week, but we also pulled an audible and changed assignments.
Oh, yeah. I love audibles.
For those of you who are excited to hear about the Lost Flowers of Alice Hart and the Class of '09, you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer.
To explain why we pulled the audible, Netflix has dumped a lot of content, I think kind of like in the last 1 to 2 weeks. So we thought it would probably serve ourselves and our listeners better if we focused on some of the new stuff that's just been released rather than digging into the Hulu and Amazon Prime archives for some more esoteric, let's say, viewing material. So before we dive into our self-appointed assignments, Pete, do you want to give the abbreviated rules of stream or skip just to refresh everyone's memories now?
Absolutely. So again, this is what we normally do, even though we have deviated this week. Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows for each other. Every week, we randomly assign each other one show to watch. We watch at least 2 episodes of that show, and based on that, we determine if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Okay, without further ado, I have assigned myself The Fall of the House of Usher. Pete, what did you self-assign?
A docuseries called Big Vape.
Why don't we start with Big Vape?
For our listeners, it's a little bit of an inside joke because Big Vape is a little close to home for Ethan and myself, not because we're smokers, not because we're big vapors, not because we're into that culture at all. But because we have a colleague of ours who is an angel investor.
That's right.
Who was very deeply involved with the subject of the docuseries, Juul.
So I think everyone knows what vaping is, right?
Yeah.
And Juul was, would you say they were the first popular vaping apparatus?
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's consider Juul like the Apple of e-cigarettes or vaping devices or whatever the technical term is.
Yeah.
They may not have been first to market, but they were the ones who made it cool.
Okay.
That's basically the whole point of this series, a 4-episode docuseries, but this is the most standard Netflix documentary you'll find. Like, if you're thinking of a Netflix documentary archetype, this show is it. This is not a criticism because I think Netflix has, over the last couple of years, really refined the process of either financing or developing and producing their own documentaries.
Yeah.
And they've got it down to a fine art in the sense that they're generally quite compelling to watch. They're done very well. Production values are good. The interviews are great. Again, the appeal of a documentary is especially high or especially low based purely on what your personal opinion or interest level is on the subject at hand. If you're not interested in the subject at hand, you're not going to really care about the docuseries. It's generally not targeted for you.
Right.
You know, we've seen that they've done documentaries on opioids. They've done documentaries on sports. They've done documentaries on Michael J. Fox. And by they, I mean the studios.
Let me ask you a question, though, straight away.
Yeah.
Juul is the company, and the product we refer to, I call it vaping, but it's really e-cigarettes is like the technical name of this, right?
Yeah. So, for example, I would agree with you. I would also call it an e-cigarette. But the founders of Juul went out of their way to disassociate themselves from cigarettes
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
because they
Yeah,
wanted to be considered an alternative to cigarettes. So they
right,
were like, well, we're
right.
not a cigarette. We're not even an electronic cigarette.
Yeah.
We're a nebulizing device.
I don't
Or
even know what that means.
exactly. So the whole point is that the first episode, for example, focuses purely on the creation of the Juul device, how the
Okay.
founders met, where they
Mhm.
met. And then the second episode starts talking about the rise and the increase of usage, not just of e-cigs in the market, but also specifically for Juul, talking about the
Mhm.
prototype device, what worked about it, what didn't work about it, and then their secondary device, which was the actual Juul device that we all know. I stopped at the third episode. I haven't finished the third, and I doubt I'm going to finish the fourth.
Ooh, damning.
It's not damning. It's not damning at all because, again, this is your very stereotypical Netflix documentary. It's very formulaic, and it's
Mhm.
formulaic because it works. The reason I'm not going to watch it is because I'm not super interested in Juul. And in my opinion, the most interesting parts of Juul, I already know from personal experience through the news and through, all the lawsuits that have happened and so forth. So I kind of understood where it was going.
I guess that was the second part of my question, which is Juul and vaping. Do you think that's really like a big subject matter? Like opioids, like there was like a national crisis.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about like big pharma or like fast food, like those are big topics. Was vaping a big enough topic, do you think?
So I think this is where the difference comes in terms of perspective from an international viewer like you and I
Yeah,
are compared to a North American viewer, because
yeah.
the third episode really breaks down why it was a big deal in the US specifically, because Jewel went out of their way to target the youth. And I really do
Oh,
mean high school students
oh, really?
as their target audience.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that, us living in the Middle East or in Asia or in Europe, that, babies are born with cigarettes in their mouths. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that that attitude, or I think that the public perception of cigarettes is that,
Mhm.
yes, smoking is bad, but I don't also think that it's maybe a health epidemic or a health concern that's so at the forefront of everybody's minds outside of North America.
Yeah.
I don't have children. That's the first caveat. That could change based on personal circumstances.
Yeah.
But having lived in Dubai, having lived in the UK, having lived in India, I can't think of anyone who sat down and was talking about, oh my God, have you heard about this crazy fad about, smoking or e-cigarettes? Like it's blowing up. I heard more about fidget spinners than I did about vaping.
So I have to say, vaping is beyond common, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
pervasive. But had it not been for our mutual friend
yeah.
who was apparently an early investor in Juul, I may have heard of the word Juul, I may have heard of the brand, but it wouldn't have meant anything to me apart from the other brands that I see. I wouldn't have followed it at all. I think it's only because we know that one person who was
Exactly.
so proud of their early investment in Juul, which at the time was apparently fantastic and now
Yeah.
maybe is nothing. I probably would not have paid really any attention to Juul, and I may not have like even recognized the brand if there was a documentary about it. Similar maybe to GameStop, like GameStop was something that we kind of knew the brand. We wouldn't have thought about it if we had to like recall it, but we would have like remembered the brand. Then there was, the big GameStop, saga that happened for a while, and they made a documentary about it. But again, apart from that, it wasn't really a noteworthy brand or event. It was just kind of like a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Jewel
Yeah.
would have fallen something in like that category.
Absolutely. So, First episode was about the founders and how the product was created. Second episode
Yeah.
was about how it was marketed and blew up. Third
Yeah.
episode is basically about the side effects and the downsides of it blowing up. And I imagine the fourth episode is going to be about the legal repercussions of all of that and the current status. So I'm almost certain that episode 4 is going to be like a where are they now kind of situation and what
Yeah.
is happening to Jewel right now situation. Jewel
Yeah.
is clearly very much alive. I mean, the company still exists, the product still exists, people are still vaping like there's no tomorrow. That's why I stopped watching it, not because it was bad, not because I think this is a skip. No, it's not that at all. It's just that once you've seen one or two of these docuseries, you kind of know what the formula is. You really need to love the subject matter to continue watching it. That's why this is as strong a mooch as I can recommend. If you're interested in the subject, I suggest you watch it because it does give you good insight, not just on the founders, but on the product, how it works, and why it was as big a deal as it was. But if you're not interested in the product, my recommendation is just skip it because that's how documentaries are. Don't waste your time watching 4 to 6 hours of TV on something that you're genuinely not bothered with.
What do you think is the distinguishing factor that kind of like makes a documentary really compelling or not compelling?
I think a lot of it just comes down to the interviewers or the interviewees rather.
Yeah.
And for example, in this case, they couldn't or wouldn't interview anyone from the company. And a lot of the people who did get interviewed said that they had to be anonymous and they didn't want to show their face because Jewel was like your prototypical San Francisco tech startup and success story. And because of that, to protect themselves so that they could continue working in San Francisco, so that they could continue being a part of that tech bro culture, a lot of people said, listen, I'm happy to be a part of this documentary, but I don't want my name released and I don't want my face released.
I have to say, sometimes that can actually be more powerful, right? If you have all these, I mean, it gets old after a while to have kind of like the voice encryption and the black shadows and stuff, but it can also make the drama seem higher that like we're really giving like this inside look at something if they're able to say something compelling, right?
I don't disagree with you, but then also you have to take stock in perspective and like, yeah, dude, this was a cigarette company. It's not like this was an espionage case. They weren't, selling nuclear secrets to China.
Right.
It was about a company that was effectively a new form of cigarette that they were trying to not advertise as cigarettes to minors. Again, not a good thing, certainly, but let's take some perspective. With all the things that are happening in the world around us today, how much of a big deal is it that, a few underage, okay, my perspective is skewed because I don't have children, but, in the grand scheme of things, I'm much more worried about espionage, propaganda, and disinformation on social media than I am on a bunch of kids smoking when they shouldn't be smoking.
Yeah, I agree. I always feel like documentaries that I find compelling are also ones that are able to take something very complex and put it into like a simplified graphic. Similar to, this wasn't a documentary, it was a movie, but remember The Big Short? Like that took very complicated financial concepts. It didn't so much try to educate people as just try to explain in a simple visual way, like exactly what it was. I think when you have documentaries that do things like that, it's really compelling. People that can kind of break down subject matter. I agree with you. When it's just about an event and you have a bunch of people tell their perspective about the event, it can be interesting, especially if some people are like very charismatic or they really give like some unknown details about something. But generally, it's okay, fine. I got their perspective. I kind of knew it. That's about it. Let's move on,
Let me do a quick hypothetical here. Given what we know about what's going on around us in the world, not just in terms of politics, but also, in terms of business,
Yeah.
What do you think is ripe for being Netflix's next docuseries? What topic do you think they're looking at now and saying, we gotta do this?
I would love a documentary or like an expose
Yeah.
where you either speak to a media company or like a social media platform and find out how they've like manipulated results.
Yeah.
Like I'd be fascinated if there was like a whistleblower at Google, for example, that said, hey, when you type in the word environment, we've manipulated it so that all these like environmental damage issues, whatever it is, come up first. Basically, kind of make it seem as though there's an environmental disaster that's imminent. I'd be
Right.
fascinated to hear a social media platform or a search engine where there's like a documentary or an expose in terms of how they've actually manipulated those algorithms. A second one that I imagine is imminent is probably for FTX.
Yeah, that was my number 2 as well. Yeah.
Yeah. For those who haven't been following this, FTX used to be the second largest cryptocurrency exchange in the world. I think they're entirely, if not bankrupt, they're no longer operating. They're in administration and being liquidated, correct?
Yeah.
After there were the typical kind of like missing funds, allegations of misappropriation. And the characters are very compelling, right? And the storylines are a little bit salacious. Even though the underlying bad actions are pretty rank and file, I think it's just kind of the salaciousness of some of the stuff. Absolutely, this is going to be, if not a documentary, it will probably be like a feature movie similar to The Social Network, right? It will be something like that. I think that one's ripe for a documentary or a feature film.
Yeah. I think someone's going to do something on Elon Musk, and it's going to cover Twitter and Tesla
Oh, that's a good one.
for exactly the same thing you were saying, for the manipulation of algorithms and so forth.
Yeah.
Instead of just doing one on Twitter and one on Tesla, they'll probably do one on Elon and talk about how he's like this sociopath or whatever it is. The second one, I think, is also FTX. That's going to have a great opportunity to be like The Big Short, which is, I don't think any documentary to date or any movie to date has been very good about talking about crypto and explaining crypto to your average user. You and I vaguely understand crypto, maybe a little bit better than the average person. I think your very bog standard average person still has no idea what crypto is and how it works.
Yeah. I mean, the thing for crypto is that the underlying crime is an old school crime. It really has nothing to do with technology. It's the typical, you took investor money and you used it for different purposes than you told the investor that you're going to use it for, right? The underlying technology of what you used it for or how you used it is very complex. But the fundamental crime is you said, hey, invest in films and stuff. And we took all that money, and instead of building films and stuff, we use that money for totally different purposes, including for our wives and dogs and girlfriends and parents and all
of a sudden
things,
we're
right?
driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis.
Yeah. Although I did hear that apparently the dude and his ex-girlfriend, they drove intentionally very, very junky cars.
Yeah.
Specifically to avoid the perception that they were like out of touch with reality. Like I think that she had like a Honda Civic and he had like a Honda Accord, like something very, very basic. Yes, they drove those to the bars where they racked up like a $1 million bar tab, but to and fro the bar, the party, they were intentionally perceived to be living modest lives.
I mean, the superficial optics was incredibly superficial. It was paper thin, their deception, because apparently SBF gave his dad $10 million as a gift from the company.
The enablers are equally to blame.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's Big Vape. It's a mooch.
Okay. So, Pete, thanks for the Big Vape. We have a fork in the road now. I have my streamer skip assignment, but I also did extra credit and I did watch a Netflix documentary. Should I talk about that documentary now or should I do my streamer skip first?
Well, we're on documentaries. Why don't we segue into documentaries and then we can talk about your streamer skip?
All right. So I, as extra credit, watched Beckham, which is about David Beckham, also on Netflix. It just hit. To put it in perspective, I mean, I would consider myself American. Even I was familiar with David Beckham, who at the time was kind of the Michael Jordan of British football or soccer in the US. And I guess it's interesting that there's a Beckham docuseries, which is only 4 episodes, because Michael Jordan, I think 2 years ago, came out with his Last Dance documentary. Yeah. There's no shortage, if you go to Netflix, of documentaries on various athletes. There's a number of them. I have to say, in the world of professional sports, apart from Michael Jordan, David Beckham may be on par or greater name recognition worldwide, do you think?
With all due respect to Michael Jordan, it's David Beckham.
Yeah, worldwide it's probably David Beckham, right?
Yeah, certainly career-wise, Jordan has had a much more successful career. I know we're comparing apples to oranges. He is a better athlete in his field. But I think in terms of PR, in terms of global recognition, David Beckham blows Michael Jordan out of the water.
That's an interesting start to this. The Beckham documentary has just launched on Netflix. I would expect it's definitely in the top 10. So I thought it would be a good idea to watch it. A few things to put it into context. One, the producer or director is Fisher Stevens, Hugo from Succession. You were talking about the Netflix formulaic documentary archetype. And that's true. I have to say, generally, it's not particularly groundbreaking in terms of how they film it, right? They've got the interviews, they've got some old footage, and so forth. A few things struck me about this. The first one is Fisher Stevens does one thing super cool. Do you remember in The Last Dance, they would give Michael Jordan like an iPad and he'd like be watching an old video and they'd kind of be like filming his reaction when he was watching it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fisher Stevens solved that problem with something brilliant. So he put the screen, he would sit David Beckham down right in front of the camera. So David Beckham's face is in the camera. And then behind the camera on the screen, he would project the image. So you see straight on David Beckham's face while he's watching the image. And it's much more powerful because he's not looking down. You see him like directly into like his eyes and his face as he's watching things. It really, really solved that issue of the iPad. And visually, I thought it was way more powerful because you could kind of see on like Beckham's face the shadows of what he was watching. Like it was a really, really cool effect to show him like old clips and then see his like reaction. Stuff like World Cup and like big goals he's had and other stuff. It was a very, very cool technology rift to what we've seen previously. The second thing that struck me about the documentary is that Beckham is very, very decent and approachable. Like Michael Jordan was cool for sure. Like, I mean, I love Michael Jordan. After watching The Last Dance, I would not say that like Michael Jordan and I would be friends. I feel like if we went out for dinner, we could have like a good time. I could be like, wow, that was amazing. I don't feel like we'd really vibe. He's a little bit aloof and doesn't seem to like get too close to people.
He's also a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, I was trying not to say that, but you're right. Like he just didn't seem like he was really going to vibe with someone that he just met kind of going to dinner. You know, he's got his close circle apparently. Everyone else is like there to kind of like not serve him, but like for him, right? Beckham seemed surprisingly down to earth and decent. He really seemed like quite genuine and normal to the point where Fisher Stevens focused a lot on like his, I don't want to say it's like OCD, but he is very, very perfectionist. So for example, Fisher Stevens is like, hey, open up your closet. And Beckham's like, no, I'm not going to show you my closet. It's come on, I want to show people what you like. Open up your closet and your drawers. Beckham folds his own t-shirts and like he arranges them like in this little row. It's like so, I want to say like it's so cute. He's very, very organized and he does all these things himself. He's a huge cleaner. He explains what he cleans like after his wife and all the kids go to bed, and they showed him like cleaning his grill. He's really a down to earth kind of like hands-on guy. And I thought that was very refreshing to see. The other part of it is that Beckham obviously is in a very famous marriage with Victoria Beckham, Posh Spice. So we get to hear from her as well. Beckham doesn't focus on the kids. You kind of see them in the background a little bit with him like interacting with them. It does interview Posh a little bit. And I thought the funniest parts were it was so like husband wife. Like they'd interview Beckham and he'd be like, yeah, Victoria was really happy there as well. And then they'd interview Victoria, they'd cut to her, and she's like, I was so unhappy. Kind of like that typical husband and wife like disconnect that you would see. But generally, he came across as very, very likable. Let's get to the ratings. It's hard to say it's a must subscribe because it's a documentary and there's really nothing dramatically new that you're going to learn. Everyone who knows David Beckham knows that he was a very big star and they know that he was a very good footballer. That's probably enough for the majority of people. If you really want to dive into how big of a star he was, some of the adversity that he had, some of the big moments he delivered, a little bit more about his personal life and personality, it will be a great docuseries to watch. But again, it's hard to say that this is something that you have to subscribe to. So I give it a very strong mooch. I thought it was done exceptionally well. That's Beckham, simply titled, which just came out on Netflix.
Excellent. Let's pivot or let's segue into your actual assignment for this week.
So my actual assignment is a new series on Netflix called The Fall of the House of Usher. So the 10-second preview shows kind of like this wealthy family, harkens back to Succession a little bit. There's a lot of siblings around the table, and there's two people that you're not sure if they're husband and wife or the parents. And they basically say, look, our family is our dynasty. This is the most important thing. If anyone violates the sanctity of this dynasty, there will be consequences. And one of the siblings says, oh, you mean like you're going to sue us? And the lady says, no, we'll kill you. That's kind of like the 10-second clip. It's kind of perceived as though it's going to be, again, maybe a very ruthless or bloody type of Succession, like Succession on steroids, like taken to a new level. It's not exactly what it is. So I had to go back first in terms of the genesis of this. It's actually based on a short story from Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, okay.
Which I would not have expected. So the dude who's the creator is Mike Flanagan, and he's got a pretty good track record in Hollywood of making kind of gothic fiction or haunted drama, let's say, things like Midnight Mass, The Haunting of Bly Manor. He's kind of known for this genre where it's not like slasher horror films, but it's definitely something that's got like a little bit of a existential type element to it, whether it's death incarnate or the devil or some type of haunted spirit or something. He's kind of loosely based this on the Edgar Allan Poe short story. He's adjusted a little bit. The family dynasty and their kids begin to mysteriously die. I've only watched 2 episodes, so I can't actually give any spoilers. And there's some kind of government investigators, I wouldn't say like the police, but I'd say like detectives who think that there's something wrong with this family. They're investigating this family. They see all the kids begin to die mysteriously, and they're not really sure like what's going on. The implication is that one of the kids is maybe like an informant. If they find out that someone has an informant, they kill the kid. The other kids start to become a little bit paranoid. Was this person an informant? Who can we trust within the family? Am I going to be next? Am I going to be suspected? Everyone has kind of got like their own little drama and paranoia. This is kind of where the show goes. So I would say it's kind of a mixture of Succession you see kind of like the best parts of Succession, which is this vast amount of wealth that is deployed indiscriminately, oftentimes just for pleasure or for whims, whatever they feel like doing. At the same time, there's this huge sense of kind of like paranoia. It seems to be drifting into some type of like horror or mystery. And I would expect that there's going to be some type of spirit within the family that's actually taking out the characters one by one. It's not necessarily the characters themselves that are killing each other off. So I've seen 2 episodes. I am not ready to stop. I think that's a good sign in terms of my rating.
That's a great sign.
I definitely want to see the 3rd episode. I don't know if it's worth saying it's a must subscribe, but if there was like a, hey, the first 2 episodes were free, episode 3 is like $2.99 or $5.99, I would probably pay to watch that 3rd episode and then take a call. If it was $24.99 now for the remaining 6 episodes of the season, that's a tougher call. I probably would not be ready to commit to the next 6 episodes. Like, you and I have watched shows, and after the first show, we've been like breathless, like, oh, I'm in. I'm 100% in, right? This isn't that, where I'm definitely 100% in, but I'm definitely willing to pay a small amount to see the 3rd episode and see if that episode is the bridge to get me to want to watch kind of the rest of the first season. So Netflix, you don't have that problem because it's free, of course, right? If it were like Paramount, and if they said, okay, the first 2 episodes are free, you've got to pay now for the 3rd one and beyond, it's a tougher call for me right now. Yeah. The first 2 were definitely enough to pique my interest, but not so much that I felt compelled, like I'm absolutely in for the next 6 episodes. It could really go either way right now. That's how I feel. Like, episode 3 could be like, whoa, that's super creepy. I love it. I've got to see how that ends. Or it could be, oh, that's what's going to happen? No way. Not interested. I'm done. Right?
Okay.
I think that watching the first 2 was a good idea by me. That 3rd episode, I think, is going to be the tilt episode that kind of like pushes me one way or the other. But definitely the first 2 kept my attention. I would recommend you watch at least the first 2. Like, they were solid. I'm not sure where it's going to go. But initially, it had a lot of Succession elements to it. It's a very, very wealthy family. They do own this pharmaceutical company that seems to be involved in some kind of dodgy stuff that they're either trying to justify or hide. You know, that's always a little bit compelling, even though it's fiction and it's not a true story. It's going to be the mystery element or this gothic horror element, how they implement that, and it's definitely coming. How they implement that is going to say a lot as to whether or not this is really worth continuing on.
Okay.
The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix. It's gotten a lot of promotion within Netflix. I feel like they're pushing it really, really hard. It seems like this is really being positioned as, you know, the next kind of big thing on Netflix. It is 8 episodes. The cast is all people that you and I recognize. And I cannot put a single name to their face. I don't mean that as a criticism. I'm saying they're all very, very accomplished actors that we've definitely seen somewhere else. One of the siblings, she's like a bald black lady.
Yeah.
She's in this show.
She was also in The Diplomat. She played the sister.
Yes, in The Diplomat. I have no idea what her name is. But that's an example of someone who's a very, very well accomplished actor. Fantastic in every role that she's had. I'm sorry I don't know her name. But everyone in this show is similar to that. We're like, I know him. I can't think of what he's in, but I loved him in whatever I saw him in. Oh, I know her. She was so good in that. The cast is exactly like that. There's no Kevin Hart. There's no Rock. There's no Ryan Reynolds. There's no like that one star that eats up all the billing. It's a very, very smooth cast. Everyone is accomplished. Everyone I know. I just cannot tell you exactly where I know them from. If this really takes off, if this becomes 5 seasons or more, then this kind of seems like it would be their bellwether where, oh, you know, that's the dude from The Fall of the House of Usher.
Okay. Well, we'll stay tuned for you to see if your rating changes up or down.
Up or down. Tune in next week. That's our Audible on the stream or skip segment. Dare we make picks for next week?
You unfortunately will have to wade through the morass that is Max to watch a show called Warrior.
Warrior? I'm in.
Yeah, it looks really good. I'm actually quite excited to hear about it.
All right, I'm in.
And I will be on Netflix watching a show, which I assume is foreign language based on the title, Giri/Haji.
Oh, yeah. I chose this for you, but I did disclose it was going to be foreign language.
You did. And I am very interested. And it looked very exciting.
So Giri Haji, and I've got Warrior.
Yeah.
Pete, if folks want to give us some feedback, comments, give us their opinion on Beckham, give us their opinion on the big vape, if they like vaping. What are our social media deets that we can have people contact us on?
That's right. Right now, Ethan and I are down to about 30 odd shows combined on our streamer skip list. Yep. We're looking for your help to add to that, especially with the SAG after strike. If you have any shows, reach out to us. You can tweet at us at FNS Podcast. You can DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. You can email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Or as always, the best thing you can do, like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, and of course, hit that bell so that when the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast drops, you'll be the first to know.
Pete, always a pleasure to do a stream or skip episode with you. I think today was particularly good, and I'm looking forward to Warrior next week.
Indeed. Until then, thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day ahead. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.